It is a few days until the start of the ELF season. I couldn't be more excited. It's going to be a great year. OTAs are out of the way. Playbooks are installed. Players are in the countries. Talk has started. It's all just coming together. I wanted to look today at the matchups in week 1, see how I think each team could do, and give a score prediction. Me and AI from the last video, my Snapchat AI, are going to predict some of the score lines. I'm going to go through some keys to success, we'll call it, for the teams and how they're going to maybe go about winning in these certain situations. We have a bunch of outstanding matchups I'm going to show on screen, and the first one we're going to get into is Vienna versus the Enthroners. We'll start with Vienna. Keys to success. Do not underestimate the Enthroners. They did this last year towards the end of the year and they nearly fucking lost the game, which was kind of mad because Vienna were on an undefeated season. They do have an easier conference. Both these teams are in the East. It is an easy conference, but Vienna cannot come in lackadaisical and thinking they're going to already win the game. Otherwise, they will get bit on the ass. Pressure on the QB. I think this one is extremely important. You know, Jack Mangle throws a lot of interceptions. We saw that in college, that he didn't have a very good interception rate. He actually threw more interceptions than touchdowns in his final year in college. So, they need to put the pressure on him. They do have a solid defensive line. It's not the best in the league, but the ability they have off the edge is important. I think that will be a key because the Enthroners' offensive line is not good, let's be honest. It's built up of players that aren't necessarily the most elite in their position. So early and often, sending pressure at Jack Mangle, testing him, and seeing how he deals with that is going to be super important. On the offense, attacking the middle, they have Weston Carr, who is a solid receiver. They have Jordan Bua, who's one of the best European receivers. They also have Noah Traore, who I picked as my Rookie of the Year favourite. They also got people like Raphael, who can play as a running back or a receiver. They do have ability over the middle. The speed of them is more than the Enthroners have at linebacker. That's going to be important. Ben Holmes is going to want to heat up quickly. I think shots over the middle are going to raise his confidence. He's not played in a while. It's good to test him early, see what he can do, open up the playbook a bit, you know. We don't know what Ben Holmes looks like. We've not seen him play in years. So this would be a good opportunity for him to warm up against a team that isn't necessarily the elite competition. From the Fehervar Enthroners, I never know how to say that one correctly, but they need to fire from the start. They need to send a lot of heat. This Vienna offensive line is outstanding, one of the best in Europe. You know, it's excellent. They need to send everything. They've went very, very heavy on their defensive line. That's where their A imports are. It's where they got a couple of E imports. It's unusual. It's not the norm for the European teams to do this, so they're going to have to get immediate pressure. Jabari Regan is going to be a massive part of that. He, of course, is a massively underrated pass rusher. Crenshaw going to have to step up. It's a big step up. GFL 2 to ELF is huge. And against the offensive line, with people like Milanovic and Lucas Holub, it's going to be enormous. So they need to send everything. Give a bit of help to the pass rushers. Give some help to the interior. Send the linebackers. They don't have the ability that Vienna do. They need to send everything. They need to just try and get Ben Holmes rattled. They need to limit these short passes by getting pressure in his face and just getting dirty. Chunk and explosive plays. The one thing that the Enthroners do have is speed at the receiver position. Samuel from the Netherlands is an extremely fast receiver. He's young, he's fresh, he's not got much mileage on him, and he's going to be able to hit over the top. He has extremely quick feet. The main one, of course, is Nathaniel Robitaille. We've seen what he did last season and the seasons before with the Fire. He's an excellent receiver. Very quick, very fast, can do a lot with the ball in his hands. Both Nick Alfieri and Silas Nasiza rate him extremely highly. I have him probably just outside the top 10, maybe inside the top 10, maybe 8 to 10, 8 to 12. Regardless, they're going to have to hit him over the top. They do. He's faster than every single DB that Vienna probably have. So hitting him over the top for those big chunk plays, letting him have those short screens that we know he can take back to the house. He did it in a championship game. We know that he can do it. We know that Samuel has the ability. So they've got to let them do that. How they're going to do that is probably short screens, as I mentioned. Just taking shots. Jack Mangle isn't afraid to take shots, so we'll see what he does and see how he deals with that. Winning on special teams as well. Obviously, I mentioned the speed they have. They can take returns. They can dangerously take returns. multiple guys. Even Rodion can take returns at corner to establishing that, getting big chunk plays to start the drives. Maybe start inside the 40, start inside the 50. It's going to help a lot. It's going to expand their abilities, going to give them confidence. It means they don't have to have sustained drives where more likely for turnovers to happen, and they can just have maybe a big return to 50, hit a 30-yard pass, and bang, you're in the red zone. That's what they need to do. That's going to be the key for them to win. However, I'm going to go for Vienna. I think it'll be quite comfortably. I'm going to go for a 40-14 win. I think that they could hit a return touchdown or a big play. I think we will see that at some point from the Enthroners. The AI, we know how much the AI loves the Enthroners, but they've went for a pretty narrow win for the Vikings in this one. 24-21 from the AI. Game 2, Barcelona Dragons, Helvig Mercenaries. The Mercenaries have just announced some of their teams, so I need to look into some of the tape for that. However, we're going to start with the Dragons. Getting Levi Lewis hot. He's one of the best quarterbacks we have in Europe. He's one of the best quarterbacks in terms of ceiling that we have. He's mobile. He can hit pretty much every pass. He has elite level experience. And he played on the practice squad of an NFL team, which not a lot of people can really say. Receiver-wise, Donatelli is going to be important. He is a deep play player, and I think that his speed is going to be able to test some of the depleted Helvig team in terms of their secondary. Their safeties last season we saw were a little bit, they didn't deal with speed as much as other teams. Their running game as well, just leaving Lewis to kind of just run on his own isn't going to work. They need Tony Monton, who is a solid running back. They need him to take up some of the load, allow him to just have a couple of plays just to develop. They can't just have Lewis throwing every single play without help. The Dragons didn't have much of a run game last year, and it kind of showed. They came to the game a little bit predictable. So getting Levi started, getting him ready, getting him comfortable is going to be huge. Testing their playbook. By that, I mean Helvig. Testing Helvig's playbook. A lot of these guys, although some of them have been training for a while, and I'm sure they've announced signings now that they've had for a while, they've only been in the building for 2-3 weeks. They need to test their playbook. They need to give them weird fronts. They need to come out in man coverage and maybe rotate into a zone coverage. They need to motion receivers to see how the defense aligns and see if there's any of them aren't completely locked in to the playbook because they don't know it. They've not been there for a while. The receivers haven't been there for a while. Show a man coverage look and then switch it. Getting pressure off the edge. Now, the Barcelona Dragons, as much as I have been critical of some of the things they've done and some of the import players and stuff like that, I haven't been a massive fan of some of the stuff that they've done with it there. However, the defensive line is actually pretty solid. Mamadou Kai Theraban I actually really like. I think that he's a player that's going to break out a little bit. Derek Broomfield, of course, is an American they have on the defensive line. Jack Jackson, I've been a vocal supporter of, that he isn't being used in the best systems, and he is a better rush than his stats kind of tell you. They need to get pressure. The offensive line of Helvig isn't great. It's slower. It's less mobile. We saw them last year struggle a lot with pass rushes. So I know it's a different team, but a lot of the Helvig team is still the same because they don't have that many Swiss players. So a lot of them is still the same. So the Barcelona Dragons team has changed a lot. Helvig team, not as much. Still a few players have changed up, but not an incredible amount. For Helvig, run, and run more. Carlton Aiken can run. He's playing the Dragons, so it's a bit of a revenge game for him. We know that he is mobile. We saw that in Poland. We saw that in the ELF, where he didn't have exactly a fair shake of things in the ELF, but he is still a very talented quarterback. They have one of the deepest running back rooms in the league. They have a bunch of guys. Whether or not any of those guys are as good as Silas is no, to be honest. Like, Silas was an elite running back. They're going to have to do it by committee. They're going to have to keep rotating, keep everyone fresh. They do, at the moment, have not all of their imports signed in. For some reason. So they're going to have to rely on what they do know, which is how to run the ball. They're big on the offensive line, especially at the Maximum Rossell and Stefan Stefansson. They're two big fucking dudes. So they're going to have to run their side and use those imports, use that size to create a run game. Locking up on defense. This is a lot easier said than done, but when you have Ken Hike, you can kind of do it anyway, because Ken Hike is, as I've said before multiple times, Ken Hike is my highest rated corner in the league. He's up there, absolutely. Not only that, they do have a very good defense. A lot of people kind of forgot that last year because their offense was so bad. Timothy Sherman, one of the best young linebackers in the league. Andreas Burley, another really fucking good linebacker. John Falk, one of the best linebackers last season. Big Mike at the D-line. they've got guys, Dominic Leitchi as well, Tim Hanney. You know, there's dudes on that defense. They really can show up. It's just they lagged a little bit in the safety department, which we'll see how they've adjusted with that. But they really need to limit Barcelona. Barcelona don't have the best offense, so I think if they are able to get a win, it would be very, very helpful for them just going forwards with the momentum. And then lastly, storming the offensive line. Barcelona got fucking robbed of a lot of their best offensive linemen last season. A few of them have stayed. They've got a few tiny guys. Alves Nunes is a solid center. It's just Heldervik do have a good defensive line, as I mentioned previously. They have a better defensive line, I think, than Barcelona have a good offensive line. They need to get Levi pressured, man. I know he can do a lot under pressure. I know he has the legs. I know he can extend plays. They need to get him behind the line. They need to start making long second downs, long third downs. Just try and contain him. They can't just let him sit in the pocket with no pressure and just dissect their defense. It's not going to work. So they need to storm him and get him a little bit more rattled. I'm going to go with Barcelona to win. I think it's going to be close. I don't think that it's going to be a blowout. 27-24 is what I've gone for. It could go either way. This one I think is actually one of the best games of the week, just because we don't know what's going to happen. The two teams that predicted to be lower, but I also think sometimes that produces the best content. The AI loves the Dragons, so they've went for a 31-27 win. Again, they've gone close. That's an AI, doesn't really know what it's talking about really, but it could outperform me on these picks, so who knows. But that is how we are going to go for the Barcelona Dragons versus the Heldervik Mercenaries. The Tirol Raiders and the Milano Seamen are the third game of the week. We're going to start with the Raiders, starting the home team again. Keys to success, heavy rack usage. The Raiders have a lot of receivers that can do a lot with the ball in their hands. Marco Schneider being one of them. Andrew Platzkammer, Darian Chafin, Philip Ham, Tony Rebensteiner. All of these guys can extend a play when they have the ball in their hands, and I think that's going to be huge for them. They can really, that's going to be their identity, I think, is short passes from Fulford to these guys, and then just taking off for rack yards. We kind of saw that a little bit last year when they have Jarvis. Is Darian Jarvis? We don't know. He could be. I actually think Darian Chafin is solid. However, Jarvis is one of the best in the league, so we need to see how he adjusts that, how he can affect maybe being a deep option as well, because they don't really have a designated deep player that is really high caliber. Inside run doubles. By this, I mean Milan's defensive line is big, but Milan's defensive line is also going to get tired. They don't have as much depth as other teams at the interior defensive line. And I've said about Gabriel being an all ELF defensive tackle, but he does struggle staying on the field for 3 downs. Having a center, having a guard just constantly on him, I think is going to be very important. Bonatti is one of the better running backs in the league. He kind of sat behind Sandro and didn't get as much love the first couple of weeks, and then burst out to be one of the best rushers in the league. He is extremely good, and he has a good offensive line in front of him on the interior with people like Adachi and Jared Mittendorfer and people who are going to come in like Tobias Rodling. I'm not sure if they're going to play him at tackle or guard. He could probably play either. I think they're going to play him at tackle. I think they're going to move Isaiah to guard. They're going to have to give Isaiah help against people like Gabriel. So having that double team is going to benefit the offensive line. It's going to benefit the run. It's going to allow Bonatti just to run rapid and keep the defensive line tired. Be aware of the play action on defense. Milan have the only running back in the league who is American with Patrick Carr. They have speed at the receiver position with Flores Calderon, who I did a whole video of how dangerous he is. They are going to have to be aware of that, because they're going to run, and then hit a deep bomb, because the Raiders Tirol secondary is considerably slower than the Milan offensive weapons. We're going to see that a lot. For Milan, testing the tackles, I said about Isaiah's going to probably move into guard. That doesn't mean that's necessarily going to be the way, and they can still get a lot of speed around people like Oscar Stromstead. Oscar Stromstead is huge, massive, amazing length. However, he has slower footwork. And the Milano linebackers and defensive line, I don't think he is necessarily elite level, but they're going to have to send edges. They're going to have to send a lot. I think Michael Abrera is going to be important. He can play everywhere. If you're unfamiliar with what Abrera brings, he can basically play anywhere across the front 7. And I mean that seriously. He has done that. He played for Guelph. He's played in Bristol, so I know him well. Zachary Blair is going to be important. Inside linebacker, coming off the edge, coming on the middle, and just testing the offensive line of the Raiders, because it's not as good as it was last season, let's just be honest. Using the speed advantage, they have speed. They really do. Marquise Manning is another player that's fast on the defensive side. They have Zach Brockenhurst, who is a fast dual threat quarterback. People sleep on how fast he actually is. Patrick Carr, we don't know how fast he is necessarily, but he's an American running back, so you imagine he's going to have speed. They need to use that. They need to get into open space and be able to take off against a slower Raiders team. I kind of mentioned it with being aware of the play action, so they kind of go hand in hand. Next up is tackling safe. If the Raiders are going to be using rack yardage, they need to be able to tackle consistently, stop those 2-3 yard dink and dunks, and just give them long third downs. It's going to be needed. It's going to have to happen. You're going to have to tackle Benatti behind the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to sack the quarterback and make those happen, because I don't think they're going to get a bunch of sacks. Even if they test the tackles, they don't have exactly the best quality of those positions to get through. Gabriel could get through. He needs to tackle safe. He needs to wrap up. Same with Zach. We know Zach's a tackling machine, so he'll be fine. He's going to be buzzing all around the field, and him consistently making tackles and the corners consistently making tackle on the edge, I think it's going to be absolutely imperative. I am still going to go for a Raiders win. I do think it'll be close. We know that both of these teams can score. 35-28 is going to be my prediction. The AI has gone for 28-24, but this should be an interesting game that I think a few people are kind of forgetting is quite a fun one. The Berlin Thunder versus the local Panthers. This one's incredibly important. A lot of people think that Berlin are quite an underrated team, and I'd say I agree. Their offensive line is improved. It's got better. It's not Vienna, but or Munich or Rhein, but it is definitely getting better. Harry Sayers is a very good signing. Lars Leibig's a very good signing. They do have Felix Lepper even as well. Like, they do have solid guys on the offensive line. Don't abuse the run. By that I mean, Berlin last year didn't fucking run the ball at all. They have Ali Khalifi, who is a good running back. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year last year in Milan. He also was part of the Berlin system. He played for the Adler. A lot of people don't know that he used to play for the Adler, but he was quite an important piece for them. He can receive out the backfield, but he's also a running back that I don't want him to abuse, and they need to give him the ball up the middle. They don't want to become too predictable. Last year, they were so incredibly predictable at times that it was quite painful. No offense to the offensive coordinator. I know Henry is a good guy, but they need to run the fucking ball. Falls in bad decisions. This one's about Stephen Duncan. Stephen Duncan's an excellent quarterback. I think he's one of the best that we have in the league. He does make bad decisions at times. He can't just throw the ball. He just, fuck it, I'll just go up there somewhere. Like at Dresden, he had so much weapons, he kind of could do that. He would go into triple coverage. They need to force that. They've got Alex Spillum, who is such an underrated defensive back. Like, Spillum's really good, and he can pick the ball off. Like, he was one of my highest rated DBs last season, consistently, just able to pick off the ball. And I think that he's going to get a pick. I'm going to put that out there. I think Alex Spillum opens the season with a pick. Falls in bad decisions as well comes on the defensive line. They've had one of the most consistent defensive units in the league. I don't think anyone has really kept as many of their defensive pieces as Berlin have. They've kept Ludwig Myron, they've kept Emil Forster, they've kept Carl Kitchens. They've got younger players I like Aaron Kleinman, Maurice Thibault. He's a solid corner. So they need to be able to force these decisions and try and create turnovers. Stopping the run is fucking Rokel's running back room, man. Like they got David and they got Genetry. You need to try and stop it at some point. They do have the defensive line, as I mentioned. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. See how that offensive line, that defensive line, that running game and linebackers, they match up. Linebacker, they do have a very solid core, but they're smaller. Linebacker core for Berlin is more built for the pass protection, not as much for run. They can tackle, I'm not saying they can't tackle and defend and run, but Ludwig, for example, is about 6'2", 215. He's more of a nickel. He plays outside linebacker a lot. He can move inside. Can he stop both of those running backs, though? That's the thing. Not him in particular, just him, but that whole unit needs to be able to stop both of those running backs, and they need to do it right from the get-go. Speaking of, the two-headed dragon at running back for Roklaw, they need to just give them the ball and let them go. The offensive line for them is really solid. Octavio Morim can get out in space. You know what Keanu is, and we'll get to him in a second. They need to just run that ball just consistently. They're not going to be able to stop it. I don't think any of the teams really in the league have the amount of talent it will take to stop both of those running backs. Gentry is basically an American player. Like, let's be honest. I know he has a Russian passport. He started playing in Russia now, but like, he was an A player and he's played well in Potsdam. And then David was the league leader last year and was the best breakout player of the year. How the hell are you going to stop that? I don't know. But they're going to be going consistently. They're going to be able to do damage, and they're going to open up the space for people like Matt Cole or Jacob Mazin to hurt them in the pass game as well. Ebanks and Kitchens. Keanu is one of the best offensive linemen we have in Europe, and Kitchens is the best defensive lineman we have in Europe. That matchup's going to be insane. They're going to be able to isolate those two, I think. It's going to be a good matchup. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't want to make a prediction. But I think that Keanu has obviously got the facilities. He's going to have help from his guards. They need to just stop Kitchens and how good he is. We saw in week 1 last year against the Enthroners, fucking tore them up. Kitchens gets double teamed, triple teamed a lot, so I won't be surprised if they choose to do that in this one. Depending on where Kitchens lands up, just fucking get Keanu on him somehow, even if he's pulling or moving from left to right tackle. Keanu can play pretty much anywhere on the offensive line. So just match him up with Kitchens. Just try and isolate those two, and then just move the ball the other way. Speed kills. They have speed in the running back position. They have speed on the defensive line. With people like Dusan Ivanovic, who I did a whole video about how fucking fast he is off the line. And a former NFL receiver in Matt Cole. They have speed on the DB. They just have speed. They just have speed everywhere. They need to utilize that effectively, and I think that they'll be able to do that. And I'm going to go with a 31-17 win to the local Panthers. We know that the AI hates the Panthers, so they've gone for a 31-28 to the Berlin team. This one's going to be a fun matchup, but I do think that the running game might just be a bit too much for them to handle. Rhein Fire versus the Cologne Centurions. Kind of Cologne's like feed Rhein Fire a lot with their players. So this is going to be, I think, kind of a one-sided game. Just picking up where you left off. Some people think they've got worse as a team, you know. It's up for debate. I don't think they have. I think they've remained about the same. But they need to pick up where they left off. Offensively, 45 points per game. Defensively, I don't know how much they actually allowed defensively, but I think it was like about 22, 23. So maybe lower that a little bit. But they've improved on defense, without a doubt. Attacking the offensive line. Kratz isn't on the offensive line roster for Cologne. And he's one of the better players they have. The defensive line for Rhein Fire is excellent. So Sale, I think, is one of the better players that they, like, you know, one of the better edges. I think he's incredibly underrated. Aaron Donkor was in the NFL. Perez is one of the underrated defensive tackles. Jason Takeri is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Max Parkinson is a great edge rusher. Hugo Cagles is a former UMass defensive tackle as well. So that defensive line is fucking outstanding. They're going to have to attack, and I think they're going to do pretty easily. I didn't even get into the linebackers they can bring off the edge. Like, they can still send Maris Kenzie. They can still send Flamon Zimon, who I did a video about. It's going to be extremely hard for that offensive line to deal with that front seven, I think. Covering Wellington, the Cologne team lost a lot of their weapons on offense, and they didn't have a very good offense last year anyway. But they lost people like Paul Lenhart, who was an important piece for their offense. Enthroners Hagi, I picked as one of my potential players for Rookie of the Year. I think that he's very solid, but Connor Wellington is the clear #1 guy. And Isaiah Weed is going to have to go to him, and he's going to have to go to him a lot. So covering him with the elite DBs they have in Rhein is going to be a key to success, and just limiting him in what he can do. For Cologne, get the ball out fast or dip. Either Weed gets the ball to Wellington or he takes off. He's going to have to. Get out of bounds, keep safe, take as little contact as possible, don't get hit in the pocket. I don't think that Weed is an elite passer. He's also, the same thing that we mentioned with Crenshaw, stepping up from a GFL 2 level to an ELF team, and then playing people like Darius fucking Nash and Amari Williams and Tony Anderson in his first game. Incredibly hard to do. So, using the run game as well, Jared Allman is a former Rookie of the Year. They've got people like Dean Tawani, who is solid. They need to use that. Or get the ball out fast and use quick passes. They're going to have to. It's pretty much one of the only ways. Let Owens work. DeJohn Owens is one of the best DBs in Europe. I wanted to put him as an all-star. I think that he could be an all-star. It's just the team around him isn't as elite. So he probably won't get as many All-Star votes as he did. Like last season, he didn't get as many All-Star votes as I think he should have. Leto will work. I think you just kind of got to match him up whoever he wants to. Move him around. Try and limit that receiver room that has Harlan Quofi and McKnight and Brian Winter. And you need to just kind of let Owens take one of them and just pick who you think is the most dangerous and then just sit him on them. And try and just limit something. Heavy sets. Cologne have 2 import tight ends, which is odd. You're going to have to go for 21 personnel or 12 personnel and just try and get heavy. You know, they have Daniel Leoma, who is a former Division 1 tight end from Eastern Illinois, Finnish tight end. They have Robin, who is another Dutch player who I like a lot, and I think that he can add both run, block, and passing ability. You're going to have to use both of them. You know, if you've got both of those guys in the same team, at the same position as imports, you only get 6 European imports. You need to use both of them in the field at all times. I think one of them is probably Daniel is most likely to kind of be spread out as a receiver. They're going to have to get heavy with it. I'm still though going to go for Rhein, 45-7. I think it's kind of going to be a domination, to be honest. AI has gone for 35-21, so even they think it's going to be quite a comfortable game, unfortunately for Cologne, but it's just such a tough week 1 to play Rhein Fire, no matter how you slice it. Hamburg Sea Devils versus Prague Lions. Another I think, a fun matchup. The matchups in week 1 I think are all really good. Hamburg's keys to success, firstly, sending pressure. They've invested on defensive lines. Zero Uragbo is, what I've heard from camp, is doing extremely well. Michael Kischerno, British, another edge rusher that's going to be adding a lot. Tobin Emmer as well, another person I've played with. The Prague offensive line is underrated, it's decent, but it's not elite. So I think sending both of those edges is going to be important. And getting Kyril a little bit rattled, I think is going to be quite imperative to getting what they need from the defense. Jarvis in space. As I mentioned, Jarvis is elite in space. I mentioned that when I talk about the Raiders and how much he's going to be missed. Receiver room for Hamburg is not great. They have Theodor Landstrom, who is probably the best number 2 that they could have gone for. I think that's about it, to be honest. I don't think it's a very strong receiver room, to be completely honest. Jarvis is going to have to be the key guy. Getting him in, and obviously Theodor's a deep threat. Theodor is a very clear deep threat. With Jarvis, you can give him the ball 2 yards, he can take it 50. We saw him do that so many times during the season that it's going to be important they do that throughout the season, not just in this one, but get Jarvis in space is probably going to be a thing for the entire year. Running back by rotation, Lucas Harding-Canito actually had as like one of my picks for potential rookie of the year. It didn't exactly work out. He didn't get as many carries as I thought he would. But Simon Humadi is a very good underrated running back. I think he's very solid. They need to use that. Just keep them fresh, keep them rotating. The defensive line for Prague is not great, to be completely honest. So just tiring out, getting the rotation in, seeing what they can do. They have a lot of running backs in that room that they can use. They've got bigger dudes, they've got heavier guys, they've got faster guys, they've got more finesse dudes, and I think that's going to help with just diversifying the running back options. For Prague, it's kind of the same thing but in reverse. Their defensive line is very depthful. James Brooks is a solid guy that can play all over the defensive line. I really like James Brooks. He's older now, but I think that he can still produce at a high level. Keep him fresh, keep him moving, get him some support. Don't just allow him to be alone and getting double teamed or triple teamed, because that will happen if they don't prove that they can really do some damage on that defensive line. Get Wright everywhere. Daniel Wright, former Alabama safety, is elite. They need to move him to different places. They can't just have him playing a corner. They can't just have him playing the safety. They can't just play him playing outside linebacker. Move him everywhere. Use his athleticism wherever the ball is. If you play him at one side corner, they're just not going to go that way. You play him at safety, like a deep with a 3 high, they're just not going to go that way. You play him at like a nickel, they're just not going to go that way. So just move him around. Get tricky. You need him. He's the best defensive player they have. They do have other solid defensive players. That, like, the defense last year for Prague, although they had their whole situation going on with pretty much everything, is still okay. Like, it's pretty good. And Daniel Wright's going to be the absolute fucking key to just having any kind of defensive identity. Run and dunk. The running back room has changed. You got Adam Zuleka and now listed with Merrill 0, which means Tyrese Johnson-Fisher isn't there. I don't know what's going on with that. Whoever is in that running back room, if it's Merrill or if it's Tyrese, we know that Adam's going to be there. Running heavy with those two options, whoever it is, keeping Adam fresh. He played 7 games last year. Was really solid in those 7 days, but got injured. Keep them running, keep them fresh, keep them moving. And then when they bite on the running game, use the receivers. Radim Kadus is elite level player. I think that he's extremely good. Lucas Cadlets as well. Joseph Zanotta I've mentioned. Andre Chimalea, very solid again. Use them, dunk the ball off, let them have some space. Tavira Fields-Jackson is a deep threat that you can use as well. So if you have them coming down in the box for the run and they also put them in with more of a cover 2 and hiding the short passes, just use Tavira Fields-Jackson. He's not, in my opinion, one of the best American receivers in the league, but he can be effective when the ball is in the air. I'm still going to go for Hamburg there. A very close game. I'm going to go for 24-20. I don't know why, it's kind of felt right, but this could gonna go either way. The AI has gone for 28-17 in favour of Hamburg, so maybe they're seeing something I do not. Finishing up the week with possibly the game of the week, probably is the game of the week, it's going to be insane. Munich Ravens versus the Stuttgart Surge. Munich, of course, missed the playoffs in the first year, come back with a vengeance, one of the best teams. Stuttgart, kind of similar, weren't good for a few years, got all the unicorn players in, became really good, lost the championship game. So both of these guys are kind of on revenge tours. Munich's first keys to success is watching the edges. For Surge, they do have some very good edge rushes. They have a pretty underrated defensive line and edge rush kind of system that I think is going to be difficult for a lot of teams to handle. I think Munich can handle it. Munich have got Dominic Untra, Leander Weigart, they've got Marlon Werfman, they've got Garrett Brandt as well. So the offensive line for Munich is incredibly good. And I think they're going to be able to watch the edges perfectly fine. Just got to kind of be aware of what they can send off of that. Helping the DBs. Stuttgart have such a fucking good receiver room. It's insane. They have an extremely good receiver room. Nitzlander is one of the best European DBs. Josh Flowers and Darius St. Robinson. And they got Kareem Ben El-Ghali, who I think is one of the better nickel defensive backs. But they're going to have to help each other. They're going to have to use DBs, heavy nickel sets, dime sets, get the linebackers involved with the pass coverage. They can't just allow them to man up because otherwise they're going to run tricky systems and Stewart or Geyer or Meyer are going to tear holes because all of them are extremely hard to guard and you cannot really guard all of them at the same time without some elite level defensive structure, and that's what they're going to need. Getting tricky on the O. They lost Markel, which is huge. And John Cole is a good receiver, but he's not Markel as far as I'm concerned so far at this point in the season. So, and the receiver room is a little bit, I think, a little bit overrated. Like, it's good. I think Marvin Waldrush is good. Lawrence Rager is solid. They have people like Sixten Dragon and Yannick Nowak who are good receivers. They lack, and I'm not sure what John Cole looks like just yet, but I think they lack an outstanding receiver. They do, however, have an outstanding running back in Tomo Awewo, who is one of the best, I think the best running back in Europe. He just needs to fix the fumble issues. But they don't want to become too predictable. They don't want to just have Tommy doing all the work, because otherwise it's going to become predictable. They're going to become easy to read. And Stuttgart have such a good defense, it's going to be important that they get tricky. Don't just have it be the Tommy Awewo show. As much as I would like that, I'm sure Tommy would like that too, you need to be tricky. The offensive line is so good that they have time to maybe do some longer developed concepts. But we'll see. Stuttgart spreading out the ball. They've got all these amazing receivers. They can spread the ball. They've got Yannick Meyer. They've got Lewis Guy. They've got Daryl Stewart. They've got good German backup players like Paul Steigerwald. They have guys that they can throw to. Running game, not as elite. Nicholas Kandor is good though. I think he's going to be important. Kai Hunter is going to be important as well as a player that's coming in. Leon Helm adds a fullback in, which a lot of teams don't use, but he is going to be able to be a blocker or a receiver, which I think is helpful. Spread the ball out, don't become too predictable. Same thing we said before. Getting all of them hot, getting all of them involved early, just to give them more weapons. It's pretty self-explanatory. Eyes on Tomoa. again, as I mentioned, Tomo Iowa is that fucking guy in Munich. So just having the linebackers be aware of who he is. They have Simeon, they have Azelia, they have the Javali brothers. They have a very, very good linebacker core. As well as people like Chris Malumba, defensive line. Knowing where Tomo is important for how they're going to be going forward for the defense. Identifying the target and just trying to neutralize it. Don't let the offensive line win. We went through all the offensive line and how fucking good they are. Like, their offensive line is insane. So much Stuttgart. Stuttgart is really good. But they can't let the offensive line win. They need to get big on the defensive line. Chris Malumbo is going to be targeted as a former Colorado and D1 player. I think their defensive line is good, but the offensive line for Munich is considerably better. So just sending some difficult things for them to deal with. Some stunts, some delayed rushes, stuff like that. They can't let Munich get too dominant. I actually do think Munich's going to win this one. I think it's going to be close. I think it could be about 17-14 is what I'm going to go for. A low scoring but highly technical game. The AI also favours Munich. They've gone for a 24-20 score. But I guess we will see. This is a long ass fucking video. It's going to take a while to put together. Long while to edit, but it was good fun. Hope to do this for every week, but I guess we'll see how it kind of performs. You know, we'll see. But it was good fun to make. Appreciate everyone who is supporting the channel. Everything's going quite well. Trying to think what I've got. I want to do another player evaluation before the start of the year. I wanted to do a team needs one, but it might take a while. I guess I'll see how I do with uploading this one. And what else? I want to get a tier list for Heltovik when I actually confirm all their imports are their imports. I wanted to do that one just to tie up that whole series. And yeah, I think I'll do. So, all is well. Also hurt my rotator cuff. So, GM is maybe off track for a second, but thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll be going to doing watch parties as well on the channel. I won't be able to show the game obviously, but it'll just be me basically just watching the game, and then people can drop in and just we can have a chat about the games. We're going to try and watch all of them over the 2 days, so we'll see how that goes. But thank you for watching. See you later, and goodbye.